right, everyone. Glad to be back with my good friend, Levon Vazadze. We decided that so much has happened in Georgia since we last spoke that we would do an update. There's a lot going on a daily basis. There have been sanctions. The woman who was claiming to be president has now got a McCain fellowship at the Hoover Institution, but at least she's not claiming or acting like she's president there. So I guess there is more stability, but that's just a superficial reading. I want to bring Levon on and have a discussion about what's really going on. Hey, Levon.
Hi, Brian. Thanks for having me on, and greetings to our conservative friends in the United States, Europe, and the rest of the English-speaking world. Last time we spoke, we described the dual standard, the hypocrisy of liberal globalists vis-a-vis Georgia. And, I was also quite direct and I think honest about my critique of the ruling party because it's not conservative enough. I don't believe a single second in the sincerity of their conversion from liberalism to conservatism, which they made, the flipping last spring. But nonetheless, I and many others consider it our duty to support the politicians who at last become, for whatever reason, in this particular case, as we discussed last time, this conversion happened due to the globalists forcing Bidzina Ivanishvili and Georgian Dream to go to war with Russia and obliging them to abandon their support and revert back to the only other source of power, which is the Georgian people, who have always been Christian, always been conservative, always been anti-globalist agenda. So the onslaught continues. The hypocrisy of the Western globalists, despite our affinity of all good that is in the Western culture, in the Western conservatism, literature, you name it, music, despite all that, the onslaught of this hypocrisy continues to be amazing. We spoke last time what would happen in the US if so-called peaceful demonstrants fired pyrotechnic fireworks in the face of policemen and broke jaws and skulls of 150 of them. What would happen to these demonstrants? Would they be called peaceful pro-democracy demonstrants? In January 6, I think we recounted that matter. A poor woman walking through corridors of Capitol, a former service member of U.S. military, was shot in her neck for nothing. And imagine what the U.S. or European police would do to these maniacs. And despite that, the bureaucracy, liberal bureaucracy of European Union, as well as George Soros minions in the U.S., continue calling this converted into conservatism Georgian Dream. In a way, it's a karma, for all their liberal policies.
Talking a couple of days ago, Levon, not on film, and the fundamental reality is that everything you've been fighting for in Georgia, Georgian Dream, whether you believe they believe everything or not, they've embraced a lot of what your program is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Everything I've been crucified for, poisoned for, almost died, mocked, named a maniac, now, as of last spring, has become their agenda. But I think something even more amazing is developing now, because listen to this. European Union, I don't want to curse, I don't want to say any bad words because I respect the beautiful English language too much. These, how should I call them, hypocrites, the European bureaucrats, are attacking Georgia, listen to this, for two things. For banning LGBT propaganda and for banning freedom of NGOs funded by Soros, rather enforcing transparency upon them.
By the way, we have our own Foreign Agent Registration Act, and we have our other things that we do here in order to protect our government.
Exactly. Yours is amazing. FARA. You're referring to FARA law?
Yeah. Now I don't agree with the way it's applied a lot of times, but
yours
I'm just saying.
Yours is amazing.
Yeah.
Every foreign agent under FARA U.S. law is a foreign agent unless he's an Israeli agent.
But the reality is that Georgian Dream starts doing a lot of what you had wanted them to do. They moved to the
moreover, excuse my interrupting. Moreover, this is my point. Remind me, what were the main bombs that President Trump dropped in his inauguration speech?
Right. Exactly.
Remind me, didn't he say there are only two genders?
Yeah, but the EU bureaucrats, they don't like that either, Levon.
Didn't he say that the deep state the swamp should be drained, and this idiotic sort of pseudo culture of NGOs should be castrated? And so let's decide this. If these, I don't know what to call them, Europeans, let me call them, attack us, our two-faced, newly converted into conservatism Georgian Dream, for just that, why don't they do the same? Why don't they attack United States? Why don't they sanction President Trump? And why don't they ban his travels to Europe?
Right.
What is this?
Well, you and I know what it is. He has power. He has power. You don't. That's their view of the world. Their view of the world is that they can do what they want in Georgia.
That's a fundamentally atheist point of view.
I hate it too.
We are Christians. You are Christians. Christian philosophy and theology says power is not dollars, tanks, and muscles. Power is the truth. And I'm hoping our nation will show these faceless bureaucrats. Today, some fella, I have to find his name, British chairman of the British representation in the European Parliamentary Assembly. His name is Don Tweed. Says that not only the funds of Bidzina Ivanishvili, our reigning or ruling oligarch, should be confiscated. Listen to this. But they also be used for good purposes, good projects. Listen to this. A representative of a British society who is proposing democracy, untouchable human rights, property rights. They are the authors of Magna Carta, etc., is proposing not only an illegal confiscation of the funds of a businessman, but is already sort of voicing his views on how the funds should be used. How should we? This is coming from a guy who loves, again, everything that's great about the West. How do we, the true Europhiles or sort of Westernophiles or pro-Western Georgians, are supposed to maintain prestige and popularity of the United States and the UK and European Union in the face of this fantastic sort of endless parade of hypocrisy?
Well, Levon, many of us Americans don't want to be grouped in with the UK anymore, and you and I both know. I mean, I spent time. Both of us have spent significant time in England. I went to university at Oxford. I love a lot of the history, but I got to say, it's gone. It may not be completely gone, but a lot of it is gone. If you are in a country where posting on Facebook on LGBT issues gets a knock on the door from a police and being sent to jail, then Magna Carta, freedom, it's been thrown out the door, and it's everywhere. It's on the rape gangs not being allowed to say anything that's happening. These little girls, the worst things in the world, and the people, not the people that did the acts, but the people that criticize them are going to jail.
Nino and I and our children lived there. We loved it in Kent, in Seven Oaks.
Yeah.
When we decided to move back to Georgia?
No, you never told me this.
I was driving. I dropped off my daughter at the school in England, and I'm driving back home, and I turn on the radio, and it's BBC Two, and it's a talk show. And they're discussing, listen to this, whether or not in this provincial southeastern hospital of Kent, whether or not the nuns should have the right to pray for the patients after the operation is finished and the patient is put to sleep, without the permission of that patient. And they're crucifying these poor nuns.
Oh my God.
And the host of the talk show and every single caller is swearing and cursing at them, saying science hasn't proved the existence of God. And some idiot is calling and saying, I don't want someone praying for me when my guards are down. Listen to this. If you idiot are an atheist, what does it matter what this poor girl is mumbling in the corner?
Exactly.
You don't believe. What guards are you talking about? You know, listen to the inconsistency of atheism, you know? And I said, I got home, I said, Nino, we got to go back to Georgia. I can't raise my kids here.
Yeah.
I love English rugby. I know Jerome Klapka, Jerome's Three Men in the Boat with a Dog. I love Shakespeare. I love Tennyson. Everything. But where is it? I grew up on the Beatles. Where is it? It's dead, for God's sake.
Yeah.
And, you know, we considered all of it dead in the West, including the United States, and sort of Trump is this, you know, I don't want to idealize him, but it's this resurgence and a chance.
Well, at this point, you know, there were times where I obviously had my differences. Originally, we endorsed our organization, National Organization for Marriage, endorsed Ted Cruz in 2016. But every day he has been in office, even back in 2016, I was impressed with his ability to say what he was going to do and to just do it. But now, after their attempt to kill him, it's a whole new level. He is unleashed. Every day he is doing something new. I mean, just yesterday, lady complaining because her passport is not going to be processed because she is pretending to be a he and wanted an X marker, not male or female. But the passport processing is no longer processing any of this silliness that there's anything other than male or female. From our embassies, which will no longer have the pride flag flown.
Hallelujah. Thank God. I'm still counting on you becoming the ambassador of the United States in Georgia because you're the most popular American in Georgia.
Well, I would love it.
You're kind of my last chance to save the reputation of the U.S. in Georgia after all these glass-eyed LGBT propagandists in Tbilisi, for God's sake.
Well, this though is something that's troubling because you and I know, and you've enlightened me to the importance of Georgia as the first Christian country, as a country at the crossroads of civilization, as a country that for too long people have tried to treat as their plaything, big powers pushing around. And, you know, even though you're saying, well, you know, the history of Georgian dream, and you have had your big differences, the fundamental reality is that at some point they said we're not going to be pushed around anymore. And they weren't going to be thrown into a war with Russia. They did stand up, and what they got for that was Representative Joe Wilson and the Helsinki Commission types, are basically our neoconservatives, pushed Biden, and Biden willingly complied and issued sanctions on Bidzina. So that's happened since we last spoke. And what I am praying for, and again, I'm not representing any foreign government. I'm doing this because I believe in it. Anyone I talk to, I say these sanctions should be immediately rescinded. This is absolutely out of control, and realize that what we saw in Romania, where the radicals actually won in the sense of stopping the election, they were trying to do that here. They were trying to take a legitimate election and throw it out.
Cancel democracy.
Cancel. So this is clearly what they're doing. The most recent OSCE statements, the pay statements, everything that looked at the election was legitimate. Every time Georgia has an election, I went back and I looked at what these outside groups had said. Every year you've had an election, they've said, well, there were irregularities, there was this. But so this election was no different in their claims, but never did they claim that these irregularities, we have irregularities in the United States. Every country has irregularities.
Oh, really? I mean, the United States has lost.
Yeah.
American liberals have lost every right to the fairness, to claim fairness after the 2020 elections, which in my firm belief were simply stolen from the conservatives.
But even the liberals,
who are these people to tell us something?
I agree with you, but even the liberals don't say what Joe Wilson and Salome and others are claiming.
These are just, this is the international mafia of demons. And look, I fully agree with, first of all, with your position, what you just said, what Trump should do. I'll never idolize the guy. I think he's our hope. I'll never agree on his preposterous statements about Gaza. I don't think you can remain a conscientious person and support the genocide of people, irrespective of their religion, belief, and nationality, right? But that said, the only chance for Trump not to have another Ukraine around the Russian frontiers in Georgia, God forbid, is to revoke these sanctions, which were definitely completely unjust and politically motivated, imposed upon Georgia and its leadership, number one, and number two, demand from the European Union to do the same, or impose the mirror sanctions upon him. Because again, for the European Union has also sanctioned Georgia for the very thesis voiced in the inauguration speech of Donald J. Trump. So either or, save the face of the West in general in the East. I think the fundamental problem, and you and I have talked about this, is the total lack of education and culture. These people don't understand who we are. We fought with bare hands communism and fascism and defeated both. And neither one of us got scared. Georgia was the nation of 4 million and sacrificed 400,000 warriors in World War II against fascism. All along, we fought communism. And then after we defeated both of them, they decided to defeat us with what? With so-called gay parades? Yeah. We said to them, don't even try. We'll all simply die, but not let you subvert the Georgian culture, our alphabet, our Christianity, our wine culture, our way we treat our wives and children. Who are you? You call, let's say, the hypocrisy is amazing. You call the Saudis your strategic partners. Why don't you ever try to have a so-called gay parade in Saudi Arabia, in the country? Why don't you do it? They're your strategic partners. We are your strategic. Because we're not Muslim and we're not gonna burn your flags, and because we're Christians and we're gonna, use our words and our prayers to subvert this. And what's disappointed us? I'm how I love America, how my English is American English, I studied there. I love everything healthy about your great country. But I've always hoped that sooner or later we'll find someone cultured enough in the State Department who will say, okay, let's stop recruiting every single pervert in Tbilisi to work for USAID. To get a job with the Americans in Tbilisi in the last 30 years, all you needed to do, Brian, was to be a pervert.
Yeah.
And then you had your salary, your NGO, everything. And we were hoping sooner or later these people will discover we cannot, every society has perverts who follow different kinds of sins. We do, you do, etc. But we were waiting for this to happen. And the entire first term of Donald Trump passed without him being able to get his hands on us. Now is the time. If he doesn't want to receive another Ukraine on the border of Russia, which he will then have to deal with, because Russian tanks will roll in and kill my compatriots, and all of my prayers and works to reconcile Russia and Georgia will die on that day. Everything I've devoted my life to. If we don't want that to happen, Trump needs to step in. He needs to, first of all, kick out this maniac woman who is no longer the president of Georgia, Salome. Imagine she lost everything by constitution, by law, and she's going around saying, I'm still the president of Georgia. Oh, really?
Yeah, and she's convinced.
Even Trump didn't do that.
No.
He won the election in 2020.
Right.
It was stolen from him, unlike from this, I don't want to say anything about this woman, just this pseudo woman. And Trump said, okay, be peaceful, I surrender. Despite the fact, the overwhelming evidence, these people are now teaching us about fair elections. I don't know. It's just, it blows my mind.
Well, the problem is that, I mean, the major problem is that the deep state is real. People don't realize that. And that these neoconservatives have not learned any lessons from the history. So that when someone like you or I says, well, you know, look, Georgia is a very important country. It's an important country. It's a beautiful country for anyone that gets to know Georgians. Unbelievable hospitality, but it also has strategic importance. And the reality is that pushing Georgia into a frontal confrontation with Russia and encouraging such a thing already spelt disaster for Georgia because of the lost. The 1/3 of your country is currently occupied. And, you know, I went back and after we talked, I started reading the history of Saakashvili and reading the history of what occurred. And again, I'm not saying, you know, obviously I don't want the Russians to be there. I want Georgia to control that area. But the reality is that the U.S. and others were pushing the idea that there should be a confrontation. And then once there was, we didn't come to your aid. We didn't come and send our tanks in. And so it's a horrible example of what not to have occur for Trump. And the first step in this is to make right what Biden did wrong and the neocons did wrong, get rid of these sanctions, reestablished a very good relationship with Georgia, and then be realistic about what the future holds. Make sure that it's, you know, Georgia is not America's plaything. Georgia is not Russia's plaything. Georgia is for Georgia. And it could be friends with everyone as long as we don't try and dictate.
Absolutely.
Especially when we're dictating such idiocy. Like we're dictating the very things that are going to most likely cause a war and have you lose your territory. That's what, to me, was so startling about the history of Abkhazia and so-called South Ossetia is that there was almost an encouragement for a confrontation that we were never going to help you with.
Absolutely, and the genocide of Georgians, which happened in Abkhazia and so-called South Ossetia, the region of Tskhinvali, is an unhealing wound on our body. And we understand that if we ever want to, and that's like the holy goal of every Georgian, to get back Abkhazia and Tskhinvali, if we ever want to do this, we cannot do this through war. We have to do this through diplomacy, through peace, through guaranteeing the rights of our aggressive minority separatists who were also victim of this propaganda from both sides, and with agreeing with Russia. We don't want Russia to be our enemy. We want them to be our friends. The US doesn't want Georgia as the enemy of Russia. Maybe neocons do, but the US doesn't need another battleground against Russia. The US needs an oasis of cooperation and dialogue with Russia. And Georgia is perfect for that. Location-wise, there is no other better place in the world in terms of wine and food to sit down around the table and talk. And civilization.
I definitely believe in that. And you know I've been to a lot of places. I'm always trying to come back to Georgia.
Exactly. And so what we are saying, everyone's great at something. But look, everyone in Georgia knows that Kelly Degnan, the previous ambassador to Georgia, when she pushed our two-faced government to go to war with Russia, and when then Prime Minister of Georgia, Irakli Garibashvili, said to her, but, you know, we'll just be exterminated. We're not Ukraine. We're brave people. We're great warriors, but we're a small country. What do you want us to do? We won't last for longer than a few days. The response was, we know you'll last a few days, but then you have a wonderful mountainous terrain for a partisan war, and we'll back you. Listen to this. Listen to how their brains work. They want us to burn down in partisan wars. For what? For the result that they received in Kabul, when all of their supporters were hanging from the chassis of the airplanes while they were fleeing like rabbits. We don't want that. We don't want to be enemies with the West as long as it doesn't enforce its perversion upon us. We don't come to the United States and tell them to wear Georgian chokhas and behave in the Georgian way. Why can't they accept how we are? They want pluralism. This is pluralism. Pluralism means the diversity of cultures. You want everyone to eat hamburgers and wear Levi's jeans and be LGBT? You know, you may want that.
I don't want you to connect those three things together, though.
Yeah, I love.
As long as you do the jeans and the burgers.
I love a good burger.
Just leave the LGBT home.
But you can't force this. You know?
No, and that is what is emerging. That's the beautiful thing that you and I have been able to be a small part of through the World Congress of Families, is the recognition that what unites us isn't all the cultural things, all the things that make us unique. We need to lift those up. What unites us is that right now we have a shared enemy around the world, and that people are waking up, whether they're liberal or post-liberal or conservative. All sorts of people are waking up. I got to tell you, I'm not sure that Trump wins this election without someone like Elon Musk realizing two things. One, that the transgender issue on his own child has fundamentally changed Elon Musk. He knows that this is a mind virus and that it's evil. And two, I think that for Musk, the issue of freedom of speech, and it's not just freedom of speech, it's the hypocrisy of those who shut down speech under the banners of misinformation, disinformation. And to anyone with any ability to analyze anything, it's obviously clear that the speech you don't like is disinformation. The speech you like is truth, and they want to call everything that Trump did. Remember, they booted Trump off Facebook and Twitter. Anything that Trump did, they wanted to say this is misinformation, and therefore we can ban you.
Oh yeah, but first of all, my condolences to Elon, world's greatest entrepreneur of our time, on the tragedy. And obviously, we, the fathers, it doesn't matter if we're Georgian, American, Russian, South African, we don't want that to happen, each and every one of us, before realizing what needs to be banned. We are saying, look, minorities can only be natural, racial, national, religious, in each country, etc. If you abolish the concept of sin in a society, then every sin becomes a minority. Yeah. You can have a minority of liars, a minority of people who don't respect their parents. Per each of the 10 commandments, you can have an artificial minority. These are not minorities. And these minorities, for example, in Georgia, they've been scaring children with my name and guys like me.
You're the boogeyman.
Exactly. That would say, finish your oatmeal, or Levin Vazsadzevich. Literally, there is this famous woman of promiscuous sexual behavior who was the first one in the history of Georgian women to say that it's okay to have oral sex. Mm-hmm. And this woman came out on a television addressed all Georgian children and warned them to beware of me. Imagine.
Yeah.
So I'm not exaggerating anything. And they wrote a collective letter a few years back. That was before Elon Musk converted to conservatism. It's a famous letter of Georgian liberals to Elon Musk. You know what the subject of that letter was?
No.
Mr. Elon Musk, please take Levin Vazsadze out of Georgia to Mars.
Yeah.
I kid you not. It's out there on the internet.
Yeah.
So I wanted to tell after Elon came to his senses, largely thanks to the tragedy which you mentioned, I, as an entrepreneur in this part of the region, I wanted to ask these liberals, what are you going to say to him now?
Yeah.
After he bought X and realized the value of the free speech. Long story short, I think what we are dealing with is a collective exorcism of demons. I mean, I know that people who do not believe in Christ or do not believe in one God, no matter which Abrahamic religion, will not understand what I'm saying now. Because for atheists, it's all nonsense. For us, believers of God, who try to believe in God, whether we're Orthodox Christian like you Catholics, Protestants, doesn't matter. Muslims, Jews, for us, if we believe in God, we also are mandated to believe in the devil. You can't believe in God and not believe in the existence, physical existence of the evil. What we are witnessing now, all over the world, with this one chance that we have, again, I'm not idolizing Trump. I know I disagree with him, but it's a chance. It's a historical chance. What we are witnessing now, for example, he cut off foreign aid, you know that. So on Rustaveli Avenue, you now have a howling of hungry jackals to the moon because USAID has funded tens of thousands of people in Tbilisi to promote perversion, to promote narcotics, liberalization of narcotics, gambling, everything that kills the body of the nation. So it's like a pus coming out of the body. And of course, unless a Westerner turns on his or her brains, when he just watches mainstream media, he's gonna, what kind of commentary he's gonna hear about the events in Georgia? He's gonna say, youth is protecting against tyranny in Georgia. Nonsense. Hypnotized, raised by George Soros NGOs, idiots are screaming against a two-faced government which was forced to become conservative. Hallelujah. That's the reality, yeah? And it's thanks to these small windows like your talk show that we have a chance to voice this. But of course, this can only be heard, how should I call it, by the thinking part of Western conservative society.
Yeah. All right, where do we go from here? What do you think happens next in Georgia, Levon?
I think, first of all, now it's kind of dying down.
Protests dying down.
In your last talk show, we talked that there are three methods to make the revolution. One is the street protests. The other one is military coup. And the third one is the assassination of the leader, God forbid. Right now it's dying down, but it's not going away. For example, in spring, I call this the hormonal sort of irritation when the youth sort of, when the spring comes, they're gonna reignite this again. They'll find a reason, yeah? And it's gonna continue on and on up until Russia does what it must do. And that is sit down with the Georgians, propose the return of our refugees to Abkhazia and Tskhinvali under their protection, reunite Georgia and receive Georgia as a friend, not as an enemy, yes? But it's very important that when that's done, and I'm sure sooner or later, it's like the inevitable march of history. Sooner or later, I see the signs of this ripening. Of course, the demons from both sides are trying to derail this process, and they're gonna try everything not to make it happen. But as soon as it starts happening, neocons will be completely against it because they don't want Georgia to reunite. They want Georgia to reignite. And as soon as it has a chance to happen, both Trump and Putin need to use it to strengthen peace, to strengthen their relationship. They need to view this not as a zero-sum game, but as a win-win. If Georgia becomes, and that's my dream, not some periphery of some idiotic Brussels bureaucracy. We're not born. Listen, look at the writing of my name on the bottom of the screen. I have one of 14 original alphabets in the world. My ancestors didn't carry this heritage through thousands of years to become a periphery of Brussels, for God's sake, or Moscow, or Istanbul. Yeah? So our dream is Caucasus-centric Georgia and Georgia-centric Caucasus. White race is called Caucasian after us, after our beauty. We're not nationalists, we're not racists. The father of modern anthropology, Johann Friedrich Blumenbach, in 19th century, the author of Five Races theory, describes Georgia as the exemplary. And this is why when a white man is described in the United States, he's called Caucasian. So we're saying Caucasus-centric Georgia, Georgia-centric Caucasus, southern Switzerland, neutral, not enemy to Russia, not enemy to the United States, Europe, Turkey, etc. A place for cooperation, for economic development, under one condition. Brothers and sisters, when you come to Georgia, wear our hat. Play by our rules. Yeah. And we promise to do the same when we come to the United States. We don't promise we'll participate in your idiotic gay parades, but we'll respect Ezra Pound, William Faulkner, Ernest Hemingway, John F. Kennedy's legacy, Martin Luther King's legacy, and Donald Trump's legacy. As long as we respect each other. It doesn't matter who's bigger, who's smaller. We may be smaller, but we're definitely your older brothers. Your first president reigned when our last king reigned. George Washington reigned when Heracles II reigned. So let's be friends on the mutual respect basis. So up until Russia makes that step, Ryan, we're always in the woods. We're always under the risk of something terrible happening. God forbid. The best method against it, in my firm conviction, is a prayer, but also action. Because our faith is empty without deeds.
You know what we should do, Levon? We should, because we could talk for hours, we should do our own show where rather than me, it should be like the Levon and Brian show. And every week we should talk about some other topic. Obviously we can center it on Georgia, but what is so clear to me talking to people, I was in Washington, D.C. yesterday. I was meeting with some pretty important people, and I was talking about Georgia.
How I miss the healthy, beautiful America. You cannot imagine.
Yeah. Well, we got to get you back, but we got to make sure that you're
Unless
not going to be poisoned.
Me again.
Yeah, you can't be poisoned again. But, well, we should talk regularly, and I'll talk to you more offline because, for people to learn the importance of this region and to get a totally different perspective on it, because what really blows my mind is the first thing when you start talking about the Caucasus is people don't know that much about it in the U.S. And that's understandable. We're very far away.
They think we live in Atlanta, yeah?
Yeah. The second thing is that what they do know is so influenced by a false understanding of reality. They don't realize that Georgia is this ancient Christian country. They don't realize what vibrant culture you've kept, the poetry that you have in your history. They don't understand any of it. And the third thing that follows, that is the worst thing, is even after their lack of knowledge of the situation, and even after not having visited, they think that they know, and they accept what the neoconservatives and everyone else is saying, and it's a knee-jerk anti-Russian, it's knee-jerk whatever it is. They view that they're the peace. But the fourth thing is important, is that this view doesn't lead to peace. What you and I are saying right here about respecting cultures, about being realistic, about understanding that Russia is your neighbor, that you have to have good relations with your neighbor, and that pushing conflict isn't going to work, that is what will create peace, not only in Georgia, but globally, that our Christian view of the world in which we respect different cultures and nations and the reality that all of us are standing up against what has become a sort of another armed ideology, this current version of liberalism, that our view is what leads to peace, not their view. And yet they're convinced even after the failures, as I said, in Georgia, but also the failures Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, failure after failure after failure of this sort of neoconservative vision of remaking the world in what, in my view, is a distorted vision of America, but that's what they want. it's failed so many places. I don't understand why they won't even try and learn and try and do something new. Without Trump there, we wouldn't even have an option for this, Levon. That's why I'm so happy.
Absolutely. I can't agree with you more. First of all, thank you for the proposal. Let's see if we can find time. You're crazy busy in Washington. My wife is happy because after the poisoning, I'm forcefully out of dangerous for my life Georgian politics, back in business. I'm very busy, but if we can carve out time to do a podcast, be happy to. Who better than you? When you made the speech in the center of Georgia, when they tried to hold the so-called parade of the perverts, and when you came to support us, we had, I don't know, maybe 100,000 people in front of your microphone. And you said, we are brothers, and if the way our families should be kept in dignity is not protected, when will we stand together? And after you made that speech, I don't know how many Georgians came up to me and said, Levon, where did you find this American? And I said, you know, this is America I love. Actually, this is America I longed for. This is the one America that I hope is still alive, you know? And when you helped me hold the World Congress of Families in Tbilisi, in Georgia, in 2016, and made me the chairman of the event, you remember I invited Bidzina, all of Georgian Dream, to attend, and none of them came. This was in 2016. Just to say there are only two genders and family is family. And they all ignored us. And the organizers came to me and said, Mr. Levon, the sort of front rows being empty is ugly. We have 3,000 delegates from all over the world. We have thousands of people standing outside of the House of Philharmonica willing to get in. Permit us to let them in and fill in these seats. And I said, no. Keep this camera rolling for history, because when they're forced to become conservative, this will be the documentary of how they behaved, you know? Yeah. And thank God we've lived to see this. Yeah. Now, you know, as warriors...
Even with the patriarch there, they wouldn't come.
They wouldn't come. Yeah. And so you know, what do you say when the battle seems to be turning in your favor? As a warrior, do you say, oh, I fought better than you? Who cares? Even if I die, who cares? As long as the battle is won. And lastly, about the battle, I don't believe there is any other war than the main war. The main war is not between nations, between religions, although it's terrible, the genocide going on in Gaza, supported by Trump, supposedly. No, the main tragedy, the main war going on this beautiful planet created by God is between the decent people and indecent people, between the normal people and abnormal people. The front of that war is in every bedroom and in every living room. Brian, you and I have talked about this. And you know, when we had that dinner after World Congress of Families in my house, and you brought the sort of the top of the Congress, like 200 people to my house, and we had a dinner. My wife asked me, Levon, why was it so comfortable? Because there were people from Africa, Asia, United States, Europe. Why were these people like our relatives? And I said, Nino, that's because they're all family people. It doesn't matter who they are. Nationality-wise, race-wise, they're all normal, hardworking, decent people. Americans call them conservatives. French call them traditionnel. We call them erovnuli. It doesn't matter. It's all one army. It's the army of normal people. And we need to win this if we don't want to live to see the Antichrist. And so I thank you for your friendship and your support. And I thank every viewer of the show, irrespective of what they think, because please help us get the word out that what's going on in Georgia, because it's important. Every war that the globalists ignite is the fire, like those in Los Angeles, that we normal people need to then put out. So let's prevent at least one in my beloved motherland.
All right, we got to end it here, Levon. God bless you, and thanks for coming on again.
My pleasure.